CNN's Jake Tapper and Axios' Alex Thompson, they released their book, Original Sin, and they exposed what they describe as the cover-up of President Biden's cognitive decline during his presidency and re-election campaign. Now, this is based on over 200 interviews with insiders, and the book goes through and alleges that Biden's inner circle concealed his deteriorating health. So here to break all this down for us is president of Oversight Project, Mike Howell. So, Mike, when we get into this, right, we look at this. Tapper and Thompson are claiming that they can't reveal their sources due to reporters' privilege. Now, we know that's true in a lot of cases, but why do you take issue with it this time in your piece for theblaze.com?
Yeah, I don't even think it's a close question. So Tapper and Thompson wrote the book in their individual capacity. So let's dispense of this notion that they were reporters for, entities like CNN or Axios. This is a financial product. Think of it more like a Netflix production. Okay, and so even if they were newsmen, as they would like to be referred to, there is a Supreme Court case from 1972, Branzburg v. Hayes, which deals with this question directly. And it says that the newsman privilege is what they called it at the time. It wasn't gender neutral. It was the newsman's privilege. Does not apply to hiding sources and information in criminal cases. And guess what? We have what is going to be a criminal case with the cover-up of Biden's decline in the use of the auto pen. DOJ has opened on it. Both the House and yesterday the Senate also announced they have opened on it, and they have different angles to get at the same thing. So all this is to say, this is one of the easier investigations I think the government can undertake, because you have Tapper and Thompson running around the country saying they spoke to 200 people, which includes government officials, whether White House or Congress, Democrat Party strategists, etc. And all of those unnamed people that they're, flirtatiously hanging out there by saying, we know something you don't know, America, are going to become government witness lists. And so Tapper and Thompson are fact witnesses of a crime that they're profiting from by writing this book.
Mike, this is one of the most important issues right now in America in terms of getting justice for what happened in the last years. So many people in the audience just want to see someone get in trouble for doing all kinds of bad things, right, in every direction. And here we really have the tip of the spear. So, in the press tour for the book, they describe a Politburo, the insiders call it, a group of people who were, in fact, making the decisions. What do we actually know about that group? Who are these people?
So we generally know who the biggest Biden handlers were over time. You have Bob Bauer, his lawyer, Anita Dunn, also Steve Ricchetti, who is one of the lobbyists, which, what you should hear when you hear that is money man. And then clearly you have the Biden family, who were also part of the big money operation. So that's the real inner circle. Those are the individuals that Ed Martin named, who I think ultimately were the Praetorian Guard surrounding Joe Biden. And then you also have the White House officials that executed duties on behalf of, the office of the president, the incapacitated president, but they were using the office of the president's power. And on that list, you have the people who handled the paper inside the White House, a role called staff secretary. You've seen the guy, Will Scharf, who hands President Trump all the documents that he actually signs. Well, the Biden administration had a version of that person, Neera Tanden, who is a Soros operative. And so officials like that will be kind of the instrumental arms of implementing whatever decisions were made by the handlers of Joe Biden. And it seems like, from what Tapper and Thompson are implying, they know all those names and they don't have a right to withhold those names. And I hope that they are called before Congress. And if they refuse to give up information about this, they deserve the same treatment that Steve Bannon got when he did not cooperate with Congress, which is jail time. So if that's a hill Jake Tapper wants to die on for some principled reason that doesn't even apply here, that's where this could end up if he does not cooperate with this. And Congress, as a final point, has a massive interest in this. Congress obviously isn't law enforcement. Their power to get information stems from their oversight power, which means it needs to, reference potential legislation or, things that Congress can do. And what we're really talking about here at the end of the day is the 25th Amendment. The Biden White House and their handlers refused to invoke it. After Kennedy was assassinated, a lot of thought and unification of the country came together to basically set up a process to deal with what happens when we don't have a president, someone who's either been assassinated, incapacitated, or otherwise can't carry out their duties. And the Biden administration decided, and their handlers decided, not to use the 25th Amendment. And they used a scheme to get around it, which essentially, involves the auto pen device, which has become the real talk of the town. And so Congress may need to revisit the 25th Amendment, and that is the height of their legal power to obtain information, documents, testimony, which means Thompson and Tapper should be sitting in depositions before them. They hopefully should cooperate. They're trying to sound like they're apologetic now for their cover-up. Let's see if they mean what they say and are willing to come clean about one of the biggest, not only media scandals in our country, but I think the biggest constitutional scandal that we operated without a president for so long.
Yeah, I've heard about that auto pen stuff, mainly from the Oversight Project, interesting enough. So we talk about Jake Tapper and that he knew all these people. Of course he knew all these people, but yet he went out every night and presented himself like, oh, Joe Biden is still a great president, right? We heard from Karine Jean-Pierre, oh, he's so fit, he's running circles around us. So how does a person like Jake Tapper, who presented this version of Joe Biden to the country day in and day out, how is he now the one that's sitting back there and able to write this book? And everybody's just like, well, this seems very logical. Yes, Jake Tapper, we must now believe him.
Yeah, I think the best analogy here is a sports one, so you'll like it. He's the O.J. Simpson of the media. You remember O.J. Simpson wrote that book, What If I Did It, where he made all of that money, and it was like one of the most unethical and just like terrible things anyone's ever done in terms of selling books. I think Tapper is replacing O.J. Simpson in terms of what he's doing with this book and basically writing about everything he already knew and helped cover up. And I think it's really, really unfortunate for a lot of friends and people we like in conservative media that it's a content-heavy environment. You want to talk about the top things. And they're helping Jake Tapper sell his book by having him on to talk about these limited hangouts of information he's willing to share. And so what they're really doing is rewarding the cover-up. And Jake Tapper, particularly, who is profiting from the cover-up, along with Alex Thompson. Now, Alex Thompson's kind of his little sidekick from Axios. And Axios likes to hide behind, well, we wrote a few bad things about Biden along the way, which is just not true whatsoever. You go back, they got every major thing wrong. They didn't discuss the CCP ownership of the Biden family. They were wrong on the Her report. They were wrong on virtually every major issue, just like Biden has been wrong on every major issue. And they're just essentially a commercial entity. If you look at their webpage, it looks like a NASCAR. It's slapped with the logos of Amazon and all these big pharma companies. I don't view them as any sort of legitimate news enterprise. And I certainly don't view the book and what Tapper and Thompson have done to be anything approaching some First Amendment protected activity that gets you protection from a criminal investigation. No, this is a very ugly get-rich-quick scheme for very unethical people.
So, I mean, just it is, the whole thing is mind-boggling to me in many ways, right? But first, there's specific crimes that you're talking about. You lay out in this article, from false impersonation of a federal officer, deprivation of civil rights, forgery, conspiracy to exercise presidential power without authority, to treason going on here. And yet Tapper goes out apparently to write this book, as you point out, and you say you make this point often, as a private matter, right? Not as journalist, in order to make money. What else is going on here? I'm a very suspicious man.
Yeah, I'm glad you are suspicious, but this one's just patently obvious. Mm-hmm. I mean, think of another analogy of, say, someone wrote a book about another type of crime, say a murder, a rape, and said they knew all the details about it and they were just going to, not share any more information that could help criminal investigators solve it. That's the principle at play here. We're talking about real crimes. They're not just political crimes. They're not just crimes of lying or moral crimes. By the way, those are the types of things that in other countries basically get political parties banned for their entirety, and in other countries. That is the level of deceit and lying that happened over the course of this. But beyond the realm of the earthly and the moral and the other crimes they had committed, there are legal crimes. Okay, and we cite to a bunch of them in that article, which is by no means comprehensive. But we're talking about elements of forgery. When you're talking about how certain decisions came to be made, you're talking potentially about bribery. You're talking about impersonation of a government official. you're talking about any range of things that touch on basically fraud. You're talking about a lot of money moving around and a lot of people who stood to benefit financially from those decisions. And then there's also going to be crimes of the non-compliance in these investigations. And, we saw that a lot in January 6th investigations. Reporters went to jail. One of them is our good friend Steve Baker, who was arrested over his reporting. And so let's not pretend there's not a precedent for this type of using in government investigations to compel information in these areas. And I'm not saying we're pretending, but I'm saying that to the Tapper and Thompson. They're stepping into a lot of recent precedent that applies directly to them. And I think it's far more serious in the underlying subject matter than anything the Biden administration tried going after, whether it was COVID related or January 6th. We're talking about one of the biggest scandals in American history and a lot of people who broke a lot of laws in implementing it over a long period of time.
So, Mike, last question for you. Let's bring the rest of the family into this, right? Hunter, Jill, they love being a part of any other story. So let's go ahead and bring them into this one. What role were they playing when all of this was happening?
Yeah, so Joe Biden's initial role was a campaign aide for Joe Biden back in the day, who cheated on her husband with Joe Biden, and then Joe Biden caused the divorce. So that's how Joe Biden enters the picture decades and decades ago, and the media never really reported that. But I'll just drop that little factoid for our viewers here. But her role up into present day as the matriarch of the Biden family was obviously a very central figure in the way that the Bidens got very rich off of their government positions for a very long time. And also the way in which the entirety of the law enforcement apparatus refused to look at clear crimes that the Bidens were committing on an ongoing basis. And I'm talking about during the Obama years, the intermediate years where Trump 1 was in office, and even during the Biden White House, where their crimes related primarily to basically helping execute this conspiracy to assert presidential authority without a president. And so Jill was there for all of it, is an absolutely key fact witness the government should speak to. And I expect that you can't do this type of investigation without also having her sit down for it. And again, a lot of precedent here for this. Look at Donald Trump Jr. He sat in front of interviews with the Senate Intelligence Committee for days. Look at Melania Trump. They raided her bedroom over something absolutely frivolous that turned out to be a complete hoax-based investigation. And so Jill Biden, her testimony is critical, as are the other Biden family members, many of whom received the very patently, obviously, auto-penned, funky, bad, no good pardons in the final days.
I love a good factoid. Mike Howell is full of them. Go read the article at theblaze.com. And Mike, bring the heat every time. Thanks so much.
Thanks for having me.